The annual rate of inflation in Australia is expected to surge to its highest level in 3 decades this morning. Joining me now is our business reporter, Edward Boyd. Ed, petrol, food, construction costs, all expected to be the main contributors to inflation in the June quarter.
Yeah, those three categories are the ones that economists believe are going to be the big contributions towards inflation surging to this expected to surge to this 3-decade high. So we know in particular food prices have gone up significantly since the floods on the whole east coast of Australia really pushed up the price of fruit and vegetables. And then we have oil prices still very high, but around $100 a barrel due to the war in Ukraine tightening up the global energy market. So those are two big contributors. The other one, of course, is also the construction sector, which has had a pretty tough 6 months with quite a few big construction businesses going bankrupt because they can't simply afford to pay their bills anymore because costs continue to rise. All the input costs for construction have been increasing. So the expectation from economists is inflation today in the June quarter, headline inflation, could get to 6.3%. So that would be the highest level since December 1990. Back then, inflation was at 6.9% headline inflation. We did see inflation at about 6.1% in early 2000s, but apart from that, inflation has really been around that 2 to 3% figure for most of the last 30 years. So inflation is going to be incredibly high. We'll get the numbers today at 11:30 a.m. from the Bureau of Statistics.
Yeah, rude shock either way, even though it's expected. Now, today's inflation numbers are higher than economists are predicting at the moment. What's the RBA going to do? Are we talking about a 75 basis point rise next week?
Well, if the figure comes in above 6.3%, then a lot of economists just this morning and yesterday have been sending out research notes saying they're now tweaking their expectations, saying the Reserve Bank is probably going to have to lift interest rates by 75 basis points next week. All of the economists have the RBA locked in already at a 50 basis point rise this month, next month and the month after that. However, if inflation is higher than predicted, the Reserve Bank is likely going to need to act on the economy and bring down those inflationary pressures. And by doing that, they can lift the cash rate. So we could see the cash rate jump by 75 basis points next week. That'd bring Australia's cash rate to 2.1%. And the RBA has lifted the cash rate in big hits before. The last time it lifted the cash rate by 1% was back in 1994, so almost 30 years ago as well. So we're going to be setting a lot of historic records with statistics over the next couple of weeks, I think, Laura.
OK, let's talk about the R word. The IMF is talking about a global recession. Looking at our unemployment rate, is that the thing that you're looking at, economists are looking at, to say, well, we might just avoid the worst of it?
Well, yeah, look, Australia's unemployment rate is incredibly low, and our rate is actually better than a lot of other countries around the world. We are in a particularly tight jobs market right now, and there's a lot of jobs still freely available in the economy that are yet to be filled. So there's skills shortages everywhere. But look, we look to other economies around the world for chances of a recession, and the big one, of course, is America. And we'll get to hear from the chairman of the US Federal Reserve, Jerome Powell, early tomorrow morning after they make their cash rate decision. They're expected to lift rates by 75 basis points tomorrow morning. And Jerome Powell is going to be asked about a recession risk for the United States. We've heard President Joe Biden suggest that a recession is unlikely for America, but if you look at the economic numbers coming out of the States, there is a very high chance that their economy is already in recession, having negative economic growth. And that'll have implications for us. Our recent economic data came out last month, and that was for the March quarter. So our GDP is still growing compared to other countries, but that's all very backward-looking information. We want to know what our economy is doing right now. We won't find out the June quarter GDP figures for another month and a half or so.
Ed, thanks so much. We'd really love to see this inflation data on a monthly basis, but that's a campaign for another day.